me for in my suffering? What do you need for me to learn through this pain? What do you need me to accomplish in this unbearable situation? So it becomes imperative that we enter into an authentic I-thou relationship in which we are constantly learning about the depths and intricacies of who God is. We can no longer be a people who just know the acts of God, but we have to also be willing to learn his ways. Too many souls are at stake. Authentic Christianity is on the line, and the devil's henchmen are steadily progressing to push his agenda of stealing and killing and destroying everything which is good and holy and righteous, for us to have a conditional yes to God's plan because of what we don't want to go through. So the question becomes, who will be willing to transition from an I-it relationship with God into an I-thou relationship with God? Who will be willing to take your preconceived notions and definitions of how God should behave off of them? Who is willing to take God out of the box? Who is willing to truly say yes without condition to God? Who is willing to say yes through your pain? To say yes through the storm? To say yes through the fire? To say yes through your suffering? To say yes through the betrayal of friends? To say yes through the loss of everything which is valuable to you? To say yes through your disappointments? To say yes through demonic attacks? To say yes through your long nights and through your tears? Because the world has become too demonic for there to be conditional yeses in the pulpit. The world has become too wicked for there to be conditional yeses in leadership. The world has become too perverted for there to be conditional yeses among the body of Christ. We can no longer be content to be in relationship with God just to stay out of hell. We have to mature our relationship because there's souls that have to be saved. We have to mature our relationship because there's spiritual battles that must be fought. We must mature our relationship because there are places where social justice must be established. So God is looking for those who are willing to mature their relationship with him for better or worse. God is looking for those who are willing to make the tough sacrifice to join him in work. God is looking for unconditional yes, because there's too much at stake within Christendom. Jesus, understanding that his disciples would have to face these same challenges and wrestle with these same questions, began to teach them what it would cost to be a true discipleship and enter into a true relationship with him. It was of the utmost importance that they understood what they were saying yes to. Christ had to build a firm foundation in his disciples because the future of the church was dependent upon their ability to hold fast to his teachings. They had to understand that authentic Christianity was not for the spiritually soft or the weak at heart. They had to understand that true Christians will have to battle and fight their way through life. And the closer you get to Christ, the deeper and more intimate your relationship is with him, the more intense the battles will be. So Christ begins to teach them the cost of an unconditional yes. Having just established in their minds, in the minds of his disciples, that he is the Messiah, Jesus begins to tear down preconceived notions of what that meant. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords will have to suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law. And he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Here is the Son of God, God in the flesh, the second person in the Trinity, the one with all power in his hand, of whom every knee must bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord. Here is Jesus, who has the power to make demons tremble in his wake, telling his disciples that if you're going to follow him, you must also deal with external suffering. Now I hear you saying, preacher, that's not what the text says. The text says that Jesus will suffer and be rejected and die. And I do understand your concern. So let me fix it up like this. One of my favorite theologians, Soren Kierkegaard, discusses the theory of contemporaneousness with Christ. In other words, what he says is, Christ desires to be our contemporary in order to engage in a deeper and more genuine relationship with him. It allows him to communicate with us not just as servant, but also as friend. The Apostle Paul would say it like this, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering, be conformed to his death, if by any means I may attain to the resurrection of the dead. In other words, if I really want to know Christ, if I really want to obtain a deeper knowledge of who he is, I must be willing to endure what he endured, to suffer as he suffered, and to go through as he went through. To say yes to a more intimate relationship with Christ. To say yes to more intentional levels of fellowship with other members. To say yes to a more intense form of discipleship. To say yes to a more industrial mode of stewardship will expose you to external suffering. Do not think for 1 minute that the devil will allow you to grow without agitation. And he knows what buttons to push to stymie the process. There will be demons who will be assigned to your life to make it a living hell. People who you thought were your friends. People who you helped in the past. The devil will use them to reject you. He will use them to hurt you. He will use them to abuse you. There will be times when you feel as though you have been forsaken. And you will wonder, where is God as you're suffering for his name? Because the devil knows what to attack, where to attack, and when to attack to make you feel like you're dying. He knows that if you struggle with your faith, to attack your faith and to cause you to feel more unbelief. He knows that if you want to grow in your faith, to cause doubt and insecurities to come upon your life like a swelling tide. He knows that if your family is a big concern of yours, what buttons to push to snatch your family away from your life. He knows that when you're trying to get your finances right to tithe, how to make bill upon bill upon bill upon bill to come against you so that you can question, do I tithe or do I pay my bills? He knows how to attack your future. You will endure external pressure, suffering, turmoil, as the devil understands there is nothing more dangerous than a growing Christian, a growing ministry, and a growing church. So the cost of an unconditional yes is external suffering. But that's not it. The cost of an unconditional yes is not just external suffering, but also internal sacrifice. After letting the disciples know that they will suffer externally, he lets them know that they will have to make some difficult internal choices. An unconditional yes will cost you yourself. Come on now. Amen. He says if anyone wants to be my disciple, they must first deny themselves. And to deny yourself is so much deeper than just abstaining from things that you like. In the Greek, this particular word means to disown oneself, or to forget or lose sight of oneself and one's interests. To give Christ an unconditional yes makes you feel like you've given up the rights to your own life. Some of us are control freaks. We like to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and to plan out each step. But when you deny yourself, you give up the right to plan your own life. When you deny yourself, you give up the right to make plans for your own future. Are you willing to make that cost? Are you willing to pay the price of discipleship?